With the Tourneo Courier, Ford has reverted to van-based underpinnings for its smallest MPV, and in doing so, made its most affordable people carrier far more spacious inside. It may not be the family car you dreamed of, but it might well be the one you actually need.
Sometimes something simpler is more sensible. Take the turn of the century trend to create small people carriers with bespoke car-like design. All you actually need as a starting point for such a vehicle is a small van. And if you agree and happen to be looking for a very compact MPV, you might be interested in this one, the Ford Tourneo Courier. Back in 2014, Ford launched its smallest ever van, the Transit Courier. It was a design able to provide a perfect base for the creation of a supermini-sized people carrier, but that option wasn't initially taken up because the Blue Oval brand already had one of those in its range, the Fiesta-based B-MAX. That car, launched in 2012 and notable for a clever design that completely dispensed with a central B-pillar, was ultimately a casualty of the market's fashion-led switch away from MPVs to SUVs, and was quietly deleted in 2018. Rather than replace it with something else styled from scratch, thoughts at Ford's design department turned back to the Transit Courier and its suitability as a base for a little people carrier, which is why we've got this car. The Tourneo Courier, launched in mid-2018 as part of a rejuvenated range of van-based Ford Tourneo People Movers that also includes two versions of the mid-sized Tourneo Connect and the huge Tourneo Custom that can seat up to 9. Despite the LCV underpinnings, there's no lack of sophistication here, especially under the bonnet, where family buyers choose between Ford's latest 1.5-litre EcoBlue diesel or a 1-litre EcoBoost petrol engine enhanced with cylinder deactivation. There's also the brand's cutting-edge Sync 3 infotainment technology. But of course, most important is the fact that this little MPV is far more spacious inside than you'd think a vehicle of this size would have any right to be. Let's put it to the test. It's always quite refreshing to drive a car whose only purpose in life is to get from A to B as affordably as possible. So there are no pretensions here, no dynamic expectations that might be disappointed. Only a hope that the commercial underpinnings won't shake your teeth out and that the high-sided dimensions won't see this Tourneo Courier rolling about through the corners like a cross-channel ferry in a choppy sea. Predictably, neither fear is realised here. Ford has too much of a mastery of the art of ride and handling for that. This people mover is based on a super mini chassis, but few of the sharp responses of the current Fiesta have filtered down into it. But then you wouldn't expect that. The Tourneo Courier is constructed around the previous generation Fiesta's platform. You do get the engines from the current Fiesta though, or two of them anyway, a 100 PS variant of the brand's EcoBlue diesel unit and a version of the familiar 3-cylinder 1-litre EcoBoost petrol power plant updated with a cylinder deactivation system for greater efficiency. Since most buyers will be filling from the green pump, it's the EcoBoost engine we've chosen to test here, which Ford supplies to Tourneo Courier buyers in a single 100 PS state of tune. For both power plants, the transmission's been updated too. There's no auto option, but the 5-speed manual you previously had to have with the Courier model line has been replaced with a 6-speeder that allows the car to settle down a little more at a cruise. Once you're on a proper give-and-take road, this car can really shine in EcoBoost form. Get the engine singing and it's hard to believe you're working with just 999 cc's beneath the bonnet. The pull away from stationary feels eager and acceleration remains strong right up to 4,000 RPM. Plus the engine's flexible nature relieves you of the need to row the car along with a gear lever and makes overtaking easy. The performance stats don't necessarily reflect that. 62 miles an hour from rest, achievable in 14.1 seconds away, en route to an academic maximum of 108 miles an hour. This engine still doesn't have the balancer shaft that calms down 3-cylinder units from rival brands, hence the buzzy thrum under hard acceleration, but the sound isn't unpleasant and could be said to enhance the character of the car. As we've said, your alternative route for motive power in a Tourneo Courier is the brand's latest 1.5-litre EcoBlue unit, which uses low inertia turbocharging, set to help make it more responsive and quieter than the TDCi engine it directly replaces. To be frank, it's still a bit rumbly, but if you're not amongst those with a pathological objection to black pump fuel, you might well like the way that this unit produces nearly 30% more mid-range pulling power than the 1-litre petrol power plant can manage. Ford says that would make the EcoBlue variant a better tow car for small caravans and trailers, a claim rather refuted by stats stating that the diesel derivative of this car has a significantly lower braked towing capacity than the petrol version, 480 kilos as opposed to 890. It's slightly faster in terms of acceleration though, 62 miles an hour from rest, taking 13.4 seconds en route to 109 miles an hour. Whatever your choice beneath the bonnet, you'll be wanting a decent quality of ride, especially over the kind of broken urban surfaces that this car will spend much of its life dealing with. Actually, this Ford isn't at its best here. You'll certainly feel potholes and sharper speed bumps, and lesser tarmac imperfections are picked up more readily than we'd like. We're also a little surprised that the steering isn't a little lighter at parking speeds. Both things improve out on the highway. At cruising speeds, this car actually copes quite well with road undulations, and the steering feels lighter and more user-friendly. The petrol engine's buzzy thrum subsides a little too, though you do still get quite a lot of wind and road noise from the boxy shape and the high-profile tyres. As you'd expect from a car with such an expansive glass area, this MPV is simplicity itself to manoeuvre, which is just as well because Ford doesn't fit rear parking sensors as standard. The boxy shape makes it easy to see where the corners of the car are. The wide door mirrors are a commercial carryover you'll be glad of, and the expansive windscreen gives you a far wider field of vision than you get in a Super Mini. In fact, a Tourneo Courier delivers far more of a lot of things that you'd get in a Super Mini, but that won't prevent it from being a relatively rare sight on our roads. As a second no-nonsense family car though, for folk untroubled by shape snobbery, it might well be just about perfect. One of the arguments against van-based MPVs always used to be that they look so utilitarian and ugly. So, in this century's first couple of decades, most of the major volume makers came up with bespoke, more car-like MPV designs that used the same mechanicals you'd find in their LCVs, but were supposed to look more stylish. This car's predecessor, the Ford B-MAX, for instance, a model that without a lot of exterior tinsel looked utilitarian and ugly. Switching back to honest van-derived design was always going to make more sense, and this Tourneo Courier delivers it with refreshingly frank simplicity. There's a steeply raked windscreen giving a one-box look that's been visually updated in recent times. The main change for Courier buyers is this freshened front-end appearance that incorporates a reshaped grille opening and a revised design for a fascia area below, flanked by these standard front fog lamps. In profile, the van-derived nature of this design isn't quite as obvious as with other LCV-based models, thanks primarily to the jauntier upward slope of the lower window line and this overt mid-level crease that flows through the door handles. These lower mouldings also help in giving the flanks some shape, separating arches that house 15-inch wheels. Fit a set of the optional stylised alloy rims your dealer might well suggest you add in, and perhaps also a set of roof rails, and you might well feel that the transformation from commercial vehicle to car-like MPV would be complete. At the rear, there's a deeply set window and a central horizontal crease to enhance the feeling of vehicle width, disguising the fact that this car is only actually 29mm wider than a little Fiesta Super Mini. As usual, what's most important is the stuff you can't see, namely the fact that this Courier doesn't get the latest Global B subcompact Ford platform you'd find in the current Fiesta, but soldiers on with the previous generation Fiesta model's older B-Class chassis. A slightly heavier and less rigid structure, but one that served this car's B-MAX predecessor pretty well. Of course, with a passenger car, there are plenty of areas where a van-derived lineage can be a very good thing. We'll get on to the advantages in interior spaciousness in a moment. But the rugged build quality that LCVs need should also be of benefit here. In development of this Courier design, prototypes were tested over nearly 1 million miles, the equivalent of 2 return trips to the moon. And nearly 250,000 miles of durability testing was conducted in typical customer operating conditions on public roads. Ford engineers even slammed the doors 250,000 times in non-stop endurance tests to ensure reliability. They've also designed this key fob to be waterproof, which will be handy if you ever drop it into a puddle. So let's click it, open up the front, and let's see what's inside. Well, it's certainly very spacious. This may be Ford's smallest MPV, but you wouldn't think that from a seat inside. The perception of airiness is helped by the vast amount of headroom and by superb all-round vision with an expansive windscreen that stretches high above your field of vision. There aren't really any differences here over what's offered in the van version of this design, except for the fact that the seat fabric's a bit brighter. Now, for us, that's an opportunity missed. A few extra tactile touches and some additional splashes of chrome would have done wonders in giving this cabin a less utilitarian feel. That's all it really needs, because there's not much wrong with either the design or the ergonomics. You don't mind the hard plastics on a vehicle of this type, and price where wipe clean surfaces are exactly what you want. Everything falls to hand easily, and the centre stack now looks much more up to date than it did when the Courier was first launched. Then we had a herringbone style design from the old Mark VI Fiesta, modelled on an old-fashioned phone with endless little switches. Now the lower part of the fascia has been more distinctly separated from the upper part, and the ventilation controls have been nicely redesigned with switchgear from the 7th generation Fiesta model. And you can make your Tourneo Courier feel even more like that car if you specify Ford's optional 6-inch centre dash Sync 3 infotainment screen, one of 3 infotainment choices the brand offers with this model. The other way of getting Sync 3 technology is to go for the 4-inch colour display package we've got here, which gives most of the same functionality, just without the built-in navigation system. Ignore both of those Sync 3 options and you'll have to do without any sort of screen at all. Instead, you're expected to provide it yourself by mounting your phone into a provided My Ford dock. Even this setup, though, includes a 4-speaker DAB audio system, Bluetooth, and a USB point so you can stream your music through the car's speakers. It would have been nice to see a redesign for the instrument cluster to bring it up to Ford's most modern small car standards. It's still borrowed from the old Mark VI Fiesta, which is why there's no large information screen between the 2 main dials. Slightly more irritating than that is the fact that the leather-stitched steering wheel doesn't adjust for reach, only height, and it's set rather far forward, which might not suit shorter folk. On the plus side, there's standard height adjustment and an armrest for the driver's seat. Build quality from the Turkish factory seems strong, and as we said earlier, there's great all-round vision aided by wide door mirrors, all of which is just as well because rear parking sensors cost extra. As you'd expect from a people carrier, there's plenty of cabin storage with big door pockets and, by the handbrake, a deep open bin and twin cup holders. A welcome van-derived touch is this huge overhead storage shelf, though it feels a bit flimsy, and you'd have to be careful not to store anything too heavy on it that could fall and clonk you on the head under heavy acceleration. There's a large glove box complete with a pen clip and a coin holder, but Ford hasn't thought to channel cooling air into it to keep drinks and sandwiches fresh. There's coin tray by the gear lever and a 12-volt socket and USB port. Ticket clips on the sun visors, a pull-out tray beneath the front passenger seat, and a pull-out cubby by the driver's right knee. Time to take a seat In the rear. Now, you'll find lots of lazy press reports mistakenly comparing this Tourneo Courier to van-derived MPVs like Citroen's Berlingo and Vauxhall's Combo Life, which compete more directly with Ford's mid-sized Tourneo Connect. Those are pricier LCV-based people carriers from the next class up, based on longer family hatchback platforms, which is why they can offer space for up to 7 people. Given that this car sits on a smaller Super Mini-derived chassis, there's no chance of cramming in 3 seating rows here, but you do get the kind of sliding side door you'd find on a bigger MPV, which is a boon in terms of stopping your kids re-sculpting the sides of adjacent cars in tight car parks. Once you've pulled it back, you'll find that in contrast to this car's B-MAX model predecessor, there is a proper conventional B-pillar, so access isn't quite as easy as it was on that previous design. But the higher roof height, to some extent, compensates for that. And inside here, well, you'd be tempted to say that there's just as much room as you'd get in the far pricier Tourneo Connect model. That airy roof height certainly makes it feel like that. It's not quite true though. The Tourneo Courier is 71mm narrower than its mid-sized showroom stablemate, which is why someone stuck in the middle on this bench wouldn't be quite as comfortable as they would be in that slightly bigger model. The low transmission tunnel helps though. Otherwise, there's not much to gripe about, unless you object to the way that the rear head restraints dig uncomfortably into your back until you raise them up. Each sliding door includes pop-out windows and thoughtfully incorporates a cup holder and a little shallow tray. And as standard, you get these fold-back trays built into the front seat backs, each capable of holding up to 3 kilograms of weight. Finally, let's take a look at the boot. We'll pause on the way to mention the Ford Easy Fuel capless refuelling system, designed to stop you from putting diesel into a petrol model or vice versa. So, what's it like back here? Well, as with any van-derived LCV, you get a simply enormous tailgate, and as usual, that's both a minus and a plus. A minus because it's quite heavy to raise. Ford hasn't thought to design in an opening window section so you could throw small bags in more easily, and because it makes life extremely difficult if you're backed up against a wall. A plus because when it's raised, you're protected from the elements far more than you would be by an ordinary hatch, which is great in, say, a heavy downpour for corralling the kids together and keeping them dry while they throw in their school bags. And here's another useful touch. This parcel shelf can be positioned at 2 different heights, so you can separate elements of your load, say fragile things from the rest of your cargo, or maybe even the family dog from your shopping. Take the parcel shelf out completely and you get a feel for just how spacious it is back here. If you ever wanted a simple illustration of why van rather than car design is a better basis for a small people carrier, you'll find it with these 2 simple stats. This model's car-derived B-MAX predecessor offered just 318 litres of boot space. With this Tourneo Courier, that figure more than doubles to 708 litres, which, by the way, is also about 50% more than you get in Ford's vastly more expensive C-MAX MPV model, a people carrier which is supposed to be bigger and is certainly much pricier. Enough said. It's a usable space too. You don't get any underfloor storage or any kind of standard spare wheel, but there's a notably low loading lip, 4 tie-down points, 2 bag hooks, and a couple of useful open storage areas here on the left cargo side wall. You probably wouldn't expect either a ski hatch or a 40-20-40 rear seat back split at this price point, and you don't get it. So you can't push through longer items into the cabin without disturbing rear seat occupants. What is neat, though, is the way the rear bench pushes forward in 2 stages. First, if you release these seat shoulder catches, it tumbles onto the seat base. Then, if you pull on these additional lower straps, you can lift up the seat base and fold it forward against the front seat backs. This does have the disadvantage of preventing Ford from offering a fold-forward front passenger seat for the carriage of really long items like ladders and surfboards, but it certainly frees up an awful lot of interior space for a car of this size. 1,656 litres of it, to be exact. The buying proposition here is pretty straightforward. One body shape, a single Z-Tech level of trim and a single transmission choice, a 6-speed manual gearbox. It comes mated to a choice of engines though, either the 100 PS 1 litre EcoBoost petrol unit we're trying here, which from launch was priced from just under £15,000, or a 100 PS 1.5 litre EcoBlue diesel, which at the time of this model's introduction was priced from just over £16,000. Let's give you some Ford range perspective on that. The next model up in the brand's Tourneo People Mover range is the mid-sized Tourneo Connect, which comes only with diesel power. With the same 1.5 litre 100 PS EcoBlue unit, an equivalent 5-seat version of the Connect will cost you nearly £6,000 more than this Courier model, which, quite frankly, we think many family buyers would struggle to justify. The same comments apply if you shift your point of comparison to Ford's C-MAX MPV. OK, so the C-MAX is theoretically a slightly larger class of people carrier, but the reality is that it gives you hardly any more luggage or people carrying space than a Tourneo Courier and costs around £7,500 more. What about rivals from other brands? Well, a decade ago, the market used to offer a number of supermini-based MPVs. Some were van-based, like, say, the Citroën Nemo Multispace and the Peugeot Bipper TP, and others car-derived, like, say, the Toyota Yaris Verso and Verso S models. By the time of this test, in spring 2019, the only van-based contender left in this section of the market was Fiat's Cubo, which was in its final stages of production and has a much smaller boot than this Ford. The petrol version of that Fiat is a 1.4 litre unit with only 77 horsepower, so it's not surprising that it costs around £1,800 less than an equivalent Tourneo Courier EcoBoost. The two cars are priced very similarly, though, in their diesel forms. What about rivals from other brands? Well, a decade ago, the market used to offer a number of supermini-based MPVs. Some were van-based, like, say, the Citroën Nemo Multispace and the Peugeot Bipper TP, and others car-derived, like, say, the Toyota Yaris Verso and Verso S models. By the time of this test, in spring 2019, the only van-based contender left in this section of the market was Fiat's Cubo, which was in its final stages of production and has a much smaller boot than this Ford. The petrol version of that Fiat is a 1.4 litre unit with only 77 horsepower, so it's not surprising that it costs around £1,800 less than an equivalent Tourneo Courier EcoBoost. The two cars are priced very similarly, though, in their diesel forms. You could also look at two other ageing car-derived MPVs, the Hyundai iX20 and Kia's Venga, both also in their final stages of production at the time of this test. But both would cost around £1,000 more than a petrol-powered Tourneo Courier, and both would come with higher running costs and less space inside. Otherwise, there's not much else you could credibly put directly against this Ford. And once you understand what the brand's trying to do with this model, you'd have to conclude that you're getting an awful lot for the money here. After all, a 5-door Fiesta with the same EcoBoost 100 PS petrol engine and the same Z-Tech level of trim would cost around £1,200 more than a Tourneo Courier and would make far less sense as family transport. You could make the same observation of many other Super Mini models too if you were to pitch them against this little MPV. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that a Tourneo Courier might suit your family need exactly, then you're going to need to know exactly how generous Ford has been with the standard specification. So let's see. There's just one level of spec, Z-Tech, which includes most of what you'll really need. Nice touches include front fog lights, sliding rear passenger doors with flip-out windows, and for icy mornings, a quick clear heated windscreen with heated washer jets. Inside, you'll find air conditioning, essential with all that glasswork, cruise control with an adjustable speed limiter, and for rear-seated folk, pull-out tray tables. There's also height and lumbar adjustment and an armrest for the driver's seat, a leather-trimmed steering wheel and an adjustable rear parcel shelf. Plus, you get Bluetooth, a USB port and a 4-speaker DAB radio. The options list is fairly short and sweet. Perhaps the key decision relates to infotainment. You don't get any sort of centre dash infotainment screen as standard, or access to Ford's latest suite of Sync 3 infotainment features. Instead, there's merely a My Ford dock slot into which you position your smartphone handset, which then itself acts as the centre dash display. As an alternative to that, Ford offers two extra cost audio packages, both of which do include its Sync 3 technology. The first is the one we've been trying here. £360 more gets you what the brand calls its Ice Pack 13, which gives you a 4-inch colour screen and the usual Sync 3 connectivity and emergency assist features. If you want to go further, you'll have to find £1,020 more for the fancier Ice Pack 61, that gives you a larger 6-inch centre dash screen that includes built-in navigation. What else? Well, unfortunately, auto stop-start costs extra, another £180, but it's probably worth having because it makes a significant difference to this car's fuel and CO2 figures. We'd also strongly advise you to pay the extra to get spare wheel, unless you want to be stuck by the side of the road fiddling with a tyre repair kit the next time you have a puncture. You might also want the Comfort Pack, which gives you climate control, 15-inch alloy wheels and auto headlamps and wipers. You're probably going to want to pay extra for rear parking sensors too. We've got them here. Annoyingly, you can only specify this option if you've chosen one of the Ice Pack infotainment system upgrades we mentioned earlier. The same applies to the optional front parking sensors. Other possible things you could add include privacy glass and the roof rails you'll need if you want to connect in things like roof boxes and bicycle carriers, both available via your dealer from specialists Thule. You might also want the Brink tow bar, which can enable your Tourneo Courier to tug along up to 895 kilos, depending on the engine specified. Go for that, and you'll then be able to specify the optional Ubla rear bike carrier if you wish. Staying with practical additions, you can also add mud flaps, a load retention net for the boot, Climb Air wind deflectors and a Climb Air bumper protection plate to guard against wear and tear when loading. Bear in mind too that you'll also almost certainly need to pay your dealer for your choice of colour, given that solid black or white shades are the only ones that come as standard. Beyond that, you can pay a little more for two further solid colours, blazer blue or race red, or a lot more if you want to choose from the brand's range of premium or exclusive metallic body colours. We've got the exclusive Red Rush shade here. As a finishing touch, if you haven't already specified the Comfort Pack, your dealer can also fit 15 or 16-inch alloy wheels too. Enough with general options, let's consider this Tourneo Courier's safety credentials. Because it's not one of the brand's more recent designs, it doesn't include any of the company's most recent camera-driven safety tech, so you'll look in vain for things like autonomous braking and lane departure warning, even on the options list. But all the basics are of course covered off. That means twin front, side and curtain airbags, which is a lot more than you'd get on the van version of this model. And you can tick off ESP stability control, traction control, tyre pressure monitoring and hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. There's roll stability control that keeps the tyres grounded under conditions of high centre of gravity and when driving through off-camber turns. And the ABS braking comes with emergency brake assist for emergency stops that'll be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating indicator lights. In addition, as we mentioned earlier, emergency assist comes included if you opt for one of the extra cost Sync 3 ICE infotainment packages, there to alert the emergency services with your exact GPS location if the airbags go off in an accident. And if you pay extra for a tow bar, it will come with trailer sway control. One of the things that's completely changed with this design since its original launch as a van is its running cost efficiency. That's down to the installation of a pair of fresh powertrains that both now conform to the latest Euro 6.2 emissions standard, and the provision of a 6-speed manual gearbox in place of the previous 5-speeder. A little annoyingly, you have to pay a touch more to maximise the benefits of all this engineering effort, because the brand has elected to make its engine auto start-stop system an extra cost feature. It's £180 more, which seems a bit mean. Try and negotiate it in with the price you agree with your dealer. Anyway, let's get to the figures, which for fuel economy have been measured according to the latest stricter WLTP, or World Harmonised Light Vehicle Test Procedure ratings cycle. The emissions stats we're going to quote here have been converted back to the older New European Driving Cycle, or NEDC2 spec, since that's what a lot of rival models are still using. The 1 litre EcoBoost petrol unit we're trying here, the one that most Tourneo Courier buyers will choose, manages up to 43.5 mpg on the combined cycle and 122 grams per kilometre of CO2, or 41.5 mpg and 131 grams per kilometre of CO2 if you do without start-stop. What about the diesel? Well, for the 1.5 EcoBlue unit, you're looking at up to 52.3 mpg on the combined cycle and 112 grams per kilometre of CO2, or up to 51.4 mpg and 117 grams per kilometre if you do without start-stop. These are very class competitive readings, and a major factor in achieving them has been the important enhancements in engine technology that Ford has borrowed from its more conventional passenger cars for this model. A key development has been the introduction of cylinder deactivation on the 3-cylinder 1 litre petrol power plant. You might be familiar with this sort of thing from larger engines, but if you're not, we'll tell you that at less than 50% throttle and between 1,500 and 4,500 RPM, one cylinder is shut off, improving fuel consumption, so Ford says, by as much as 6%. The system can disengage or re-engage the cylinder in question, the middle one, in just 14 milliseconds, 20 times faster than the blink of an eye. And the transition either way is so seamless you won't feel or hear it. We couldn't anyway. The 1.5 litre EcoBlue diesel unit has an equally efficiency-orientated engineering CV. Tick off low-pressure exhaust gas recirculation, an integrated intake manifold for optimised engine breathing, a high-pressure fuel injection system, and low-inertia turbocharging. Plus, of course, like most modern diesel engines, it uses an AdBlue fluid additive, a urea water-based liquid that converts NOx emissions in the exhaust gas into harmless nitrogen and water. You'll need to periodically top it up as part of regular servicing. What else? Well, we'll tell you about servicing, which on both engines is required every 2 years or 18,000 miles, whichever comes first. 2 prepaid servicing plans are available. One that costs £340 and covers you for 2 years and 2 services, and another that costs £550 is transferable to future owners and covers 3 years and 3 services. Maintenance bookings can be done online through the My Ford portal. This is part of the Ford Blue Service scheme that wraps up all of the care and maintenance of your car into one bundle that includes a free 30-point e-check of vital parts and highlights any work required with a red, amber and green traffic light warning to rank items that need attention in order of importance. There's also the Ford Service app that you can download to your phone for free. It lets you locate your nearest dealer and make a booking, plus has a couple of extra elements allowing you to find petrol stations and including a Park Me feature that remembers where you left your Tourneo Courier. So you won't have to hunt for it, say in busy multi-stories. As for the warranty, well, like all Fords, this one comes with a 36-month, 60,000 mile package that also includes 1 year of Europe-wide breakdown assistance. On top of that, there's an anti-corrosion guarantee for 12 years. Ford also offers the chance to extend this cover to either 4 years and 80,000 miles or 5 years and 100,000 miles. Insurance is rated at Group 8 for this petrol model and Group 11 for the diesel. Once upon a time, when vans were crude and basic, the stereotype that saw them shunned by mainstream buyers as bases for MPV transport was perhaps well deserved. But that's not true anymore. Modern LCVs share virtually all the same engineering attributes as compact cars, and much of the same interior technology too. And a commercial vehicle's boxy shape is, of course, perfect for the practical requirements of a family people mover. All of which explains our approval at Ford's decision to revert to commercial vehicle design for its smallest MPV model. This Tourneo Courier may feel slightly more like a delivery vehicle as a result, but the payoffs are well worthwhile in terms of the increases in space and versatility that it can offer over the brand's previous B-MAX design. Of course, that's not to say that there aren't things that the Blue Oval brand could improve. The low-speed ride isn't as supple as we'd like, and that squarical shape does generate plenty of wind noise at speed. We'd like to have seen a little more effort put in to differentiate the interior from the van variant too. Ultimately, though, what matters here is space and sensibility, both these things being predictably strong Tourneo Courier selling points. If you don't need 7 seats, we'd even say that it makes more sense than the brand's larger Tourneo Connect model. And it obviously makes more sense than that conventional family hatchback you might have been looking at. But of course, it's not as sophisticated or as stylish. Does that really matter? Well, if you think not, and you're one of the relatively few family buyers still looking for a compact MPV, then one of these ought to make your shortlist.